I hear so many people who say, oh, the American dream is dead. You can't make anything of yourself these days. You can't buy a house. Everything is rigged. And I simply don't think it's true.
Hello, I'm John Brink, and we are podcasting on the Brink from downtown Prince George, British Columbia. And that's British Columbia, Canada, and Prince George. Just for those people watching from around the world, an absolute fabulous place. It's in the middle of British Columbia, about 500 miles or 800 kilometers north from Vancouver. And it's a beautiful day, late November, and still we have no snow, which is somewhat unique, and usually we do around this time. We have a very special guest, Annie Margarita Yang. And Annie is an author and a very special individual that has very financial abilities and uses those as consulting, in particular millennials. And Annie, welcome to the show.
John, thank you for having me on the Brink. Really happy to be here today.
Well, thank you for having you. So where are you located, Annie?
I'm in Boston, Massachusetts, in the U.S.
Boston, Massachusetts. I love Boston. How's the weather?
It's okay. It hasn't snowed yet, so I'm quite happy. I hope this will be a warm winter because every time it snows, it's a lot of money to remove the snow. So
Yeah,
I
and
hope
it's a lot of effort, right? So,
yeah.
and here, are you familiar with British Columbia, Canada, or have you been there?
Um,
Vancouver,
I
Victoria?
haven't, but I've heard of Vancouver. I assume
Yeah,
Vancouver was in British Columbia. Yeah,
yeah, and you heard of Victoria?
I haven't.
No, that's the capital of British Columbia, and it's on Vancouver Island. Absolutely unbelievable, beautiful, beautiful. If you ever plan a holiday, go to British Columbia, travel. Vancouver is an amazing city. Vancouver Island is beautiful. And then the drive up from north of Vancouver on your way to Whistler, amazing, amazing sight. And Boston area is very beautiful as well, and I've been there several times.
Oh,
And
I'm sure Vancouver is far more beautiful because I've seen pictures and I was like
y-
stunned just from the pictures online.
and then once you're here, then say, you know something, I talked to this one guy once, this is John Brink, and he said Prince George, that is about 800 kilometers north, and British Columbia is a big province, the 800 or 500 miles north of Vancouver puts us geographically in the middle, and then that is from the ocean, the Pacific, to the other border of Alberta is another 500 kilometers east of Prince Rupert is middle, exactly in the middle, and so it's a beautiful area. So I suggest that if you ever go there, you must go there. It's a beautiful province. So just wanted to. The other thing that's unique about you, you're also an author and a very successful author, and particularly the book that stands out, the 5-day job search. And so tell us a little bit first about yourself, your background. Are you from the Boston area? Were you born in that region? Or, what did you do in terms of your background and all of those kind of things?
I'm actually originally born and raised in Brooklyn, New York, my whole life. And I'm born here, but my parents are actually immigrants from China, working
Okay.
class. Like my mom was a farmer in China. She had to draw water from a well. That's how poor they were. So they came here to the United States with only $400 in their pocket. I read your story. You came here with only like $24 way back then. So I'm sure you can relate to my
Yeah,
parents' struggle
I
to
can.
come to the United States with no help whatsoever.
Did
And
they
so,
did they speak the language?
no, my mom doesn't have beyond the sixth grade education because they grew up under communism in China. So, yeah,
That
she
was
had to go
not
straight to work. at sixth grade.
That was not very good because I did much better than her. I did grade 7 3 times. And then they kind of threw me out of school, actually. Said, well, what are you going to do with this guy? Send me to the mentally challenged one, or should we get him, train him for the job? So we'll talk about that a little
Well,
bit
you
later.
made something of yourself, so that's amazing for having done only seventh grade 3 times.
So I'm
Yeah,
sure,
actually,
so did your mom, I'm sure. Yeah.
my mom is more successful than my dad. They always said because my dad, the way he grew up in China is when he was born, college education was abolished. Nobody could go to college. They
No.
abolished this national exam that everyone takes. It's like the equivalent in the US to the SAT.
Is that the
And
period when they had that strong leadership and that made a radical changes in China, the way people were doing things, and they eliminated a lot of people that were educated and all of that sort of thing?
I'm not familiar with the history, but this was 1960 to 1977.
Yeah, that could
So,
be
but
right.
they did get rid of a lot of educated people. They are very much against education. I heard
Right.
that my great grandfather had owned 26 pharmacies in not in the US, 26 pharmacies in China, in Singapore, in Malaysia, like all over Asia. He was a
Wow.
self-made man himself. They took
Right.
everything away from this guy. They also killed his brother
Oh no.
because he worked at a college and was quite outspoken. So they
Yeah.
killed his brother to silence him. And they basically took everyone's property away. And they
Yeah.
also took away everyone's ability to go to college because the idea of equality means, well, if not everyone can go to college, nobody can go to college,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
That was
That's
during that
communism.
period of being very radical under some of that
Yeah,
leadership, right?
that's right. And
Yeah.
my dad, when my dad was a senior in high school, during that year, just when he was about to graduate, they started allowing people to go to college again. So 17 years worth of people, I think, had suddenly been eligible to apply to college after all those years. So he was competing against like 17 years worth of people wanting to go to college. He was the only one from his whole town that got into college. So he's very
My
smart.
goodness, huh?
But everyone had high hopes for him. Yes, he's very intelligent, but my mom is a harder worker than him. She has better work ethic, better discipline. She doesn't know how to read English, but she's not afraid to go after the things she wants. So right after they moved here to the US, she worked harder than him. She makes more money than him today.
What
So
I say is that, and I'll show you that a little bit later. Let me show it to you now. So, because you already mentioned it. So, when I came here in 1965, July, I couldn't speak the language, didn't know Saul, and didn't have a job. And then I had about 2 blocks away from here, 3 blocks maybe. I had a suitcase, 3 books, 2 sets of clothes, and I had $25.47. My employees made this for me actually, but what I did have in abundance, and that's probably the key to your mom, I had attitude. I avoid negative. If it is going to be a bad day today, I swear it's going to be a better day tomorrow. The glass is always half full, not half empty. I had passion. Whatever I do, I give it everything that I get. And then the other one I have is work ethic. I work harder than anybody, and that's what I do. And even now at 83, I still do that. I usually wake up in the morning at 5:30. I always think I'm late, and I always make my bed. And then and then I'm in a hurry to get to work because every day to me is I'm excited about going to work. So, and I do that even now. So it reminds me in a way of probably like your mom, because if you combine all of that, attitude, passion, work ethic, what will follow is success.
that is true. I'm not sure if in Canada they have something that's the equivalent of the American dream, but I think that is the American dream, like having those attributes and just the opportunity to pursue your happiness is what it
Now,
is. It's not like that everyone deserves to have a house of their own. No, it's the opportunity to make something of yourself. That's the important
Absolutely.
thing.
And since you're talking about dreams, I'm an author as you already noticed probably, and
Yeah,
I have to.
you've written several.
I'm taking this out of sequence a little bit. So because since you're talking about a dream, I wrote this book, and it came out last July, and it is all about finding your passion, And I thought so many people say. I said to them, young people in particular, what are you going to do? He said, well, I don't know. I said, start focusing on some things that you will like. So and then I know so many people, they don't like their jobs. And in fact, I saw on one of the US channels, I saw CNN, I forget now which one, but they said that 70% of the people that work don't like their jobs. And 75% of them are looking for another job. I said, how sad could it be? So this book I wrote already last year, it came out last year, and it says, finding your passion, living the dream. And, and to me that is very, very important. Of all these books, I'm going to sign them, actually, and I'm going to send them to you as well.
Oh, I really appreciate it. I was about to ask for a signed copy because you know what
No,
I wanted to do is I like to collect books written by self-made people because I feel like people need to hear their stories. Eventually, when I do this, it's going to be a series on YouTube where like I share actual stories of people who started from nothing and have built something of themselves because I hear so many people who say, "Oh, the American dream is dead. You can't make anything of yourself these days. You can't buy a house. Everything is rigged." And I simply don't think it's true.
no, 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 no. Now the other one that I did, and since we're now talking about, I'm going to, jump ahead a little bit, is saying that. So I failed grade 3, and I failed grade 7 3 times, and then they said, as I said earlier, what are we going to do with this guy? So well, send him to the mentally challenged school. My parents were beautiful people, and they said, no, let's get him a trade. So they sent me to, my dad was in the lumber, and so let's send him to the furniture factory. So they sent me to the furniture factory, and then I became a furniture maker. And, but the other part that I should mention is that I was born November the 1st, 1940, during the war years, and we were liberated April the 12th, 1945, and I was 4.5, 5 years old. And I was so impressed by the Canadians that I then, from that point forward, had a dream of going to Canada. And I wanted to go when I was 17, and my parents wouldn't let me. And then I was drafted in the Dutch Air Force, and for 30 months, and then after that worked in the lumber industry for a couple of years, and then I went to Canada, and then then I wanted to go build. So that was my dream, and then my other dream was to build my own lumber mill, because I didn't feel good about myself. I had failed grade 3 and failed grade 7 3 times, and then young kids in particular, that were my friends then in grade 7, they went on to college and then university, and I became a laborer. I'm proud of that now, but then it was kind of looked down on. And, and it always stayed with me that I felt I had, in a way, failed. I was still very optimistic and happy-go-lucky individual and determined to whatever I did well. But I wanted to go to Canada, not only to go here, but that was my dream. The second dream was to, once I got here, build my own lumber mill. And I wanted to start with nothing. And I did, so that's when I started here. And then very quickly thereafter, I became a supervisor and a superintendent of one of the larger mills here. And after about a year and a half, I barely could speak the language. Then I already was part owner of another sawmill. And then after about 20 years, people said to me, "You've done so many things. Why don't you write a book?" Now, as you well know, writing books is not easy. But I had this amazing thing about me. I'm a good writer. And so I started writing a book about it, and not so much hurrah, hurrah, how successful John is, but more about all the ups and downs along the way. And I felt I had to share that with others. And so as I kept trying and trying, so the book that I wrote, Against All Odds, and I'll send you a copy of this signed too, is all about that, going through the difficult times and then again trying and trying. And so it took me 80 years to live it, 20 years to think about it, 2 years to write it. And it shows that success, it usually takes that time of challenges, falling down, standing up, and it makes you stronger. And and I wanted to share that with others that said, "Well, I can't do it, and because of this, that, or the other thing." If I can do it, coming here, when I was already 23, and then from Holland, I grew up in the. Are you familiar with Holland? Have you been there? No.
I haven't.
That's another place I want you to go. You will like it. Small country, very highly populated, and close to 18 million people. I was born in the extreme northeastern part of Holland, and it's a province, Groningen, within 20 minutes from the German border. And I don't know how that is in China, maybe, but in Holland, a small country, we speak High Dutch, but in the different provinces we have a dialect that is different than the High Dutch. In fact, if I speak my dialect, the people in Holland can't understand me. So there I can, and I love speaking dialect. I grew up speaking dialect, and so I had to acquire, from being grown up speaking dialect, I had to acquire the skill of speaking High Dutch, and I barely got that under control. Then I go to Canada, and now I have to learn to speak English. So, and then I'm going to start writing books about it. So that's this book, and then I may as well show you another one that I'm working on right now as well.
I just want to say that's amazing because I guess English is technically your third language, and you wrote books in your third language.
That is right. Isn't that amazing? And I love it, but now part of that is that I always felt from the time I was 5 years old, was not a question that I would go to Canada. I'm a Canadian. That's always the way I felt. That's where I belong. So the other thing that happened to me is that at one point in January of 1997, I was already here for 32 years. I walked into a book store here, and I saw a book, and I still don't know why I did it. I saw a book, and the book's title was Driven to Distraction.
To
And
what? Distraction?
Yes. And it was about ADHD. And I had never even heard of ADHD. And soon as I saw it, I said, "Oh my God, that's me." And I wrote in the book in Dutch, "Now I finally know who I am." And obviously, the challenge with ADHD in particular is that we tend to have attention difficulty sometimes. If you sit in a classroom for 4 years and talking about a lot of things that are of no interest to me, I kind of dream about other things, and I'm not even there mentally. And so I felt, the more I heard about it, is that about 8% of the population are affected by ADHD. And I believe, and a lot of other people do now too, that it is probably well over 20%. And I started speaking about it more I'm also a professional speaker, to speak about more in the presentations that I did. And then I felt I had to write about it. So I wrote a book about it. ADHD Unlocked. It's a superpower. That's what it
This
is.
explains it explains why you didn't finish beyond 7th grade, right? Because
Exactly.
you couldn't focus in school.
Correct. And again, ADHD, is much more to the front now than it used to be. There's much less stigma attached to it. But in 1997, when I found out from the book and started then looking at Google and started to learn more about it, the more I learned about it, the more I thought it's a benefit. So I'm not bragging here, but I have about 10 different companies. I write books. I'm a very active podcaster. I'm a very active speaker, and I do a lot of things. And people say to me at 80, and then I'm a bodybuilder. I'm the oldest competitive bodybuilder in North America. I competed, or qualified for competing in the Arnolds, and that was before COVID. And now I'm training again to start competing again when I'm 84. And and so people say, how do you do all of that? I say ADHD. So that's the reason. So I've been very, very active in that. And then so that sort of thing.
I have to say that's an amazing story. I'm learning more from you than you are from me
No,
because
no, but now
I
it's your
always like
turn.
to listen. No. I always like to listen to stories of people who are much older than me. I like listening to 80-year-olds speak.
Yeah. So the,
Yeah.
the other one that you find interesting then, let me just continue one more step then, is that the
Yeah.
other book that I'm working on that comes out next July is about living young, dying old. And the point is this one is that I know a lot of people, I'm sure so do you, they are 40, 45 years, 50 years old, whatever, and you say, no, I'm done, I can't do it anymore, I'm too old for this, I'm too old for that. So what I'm saying is quality of life is critical. And that means that you have to be, we are all blessed with bodies that are very forgiving, but they will take a certain amount of abuse, but not forever. And at certain points, that it becomes very, very important that you make sure whatever you put in that body is helps it to stay fit and healthy, and in terms of diet, and then the other part in terms of exercise to keep fit. Doesn't mean you have to be a bodybuilder and compete. And if you just keep active at least for a half an hour a day and doing something that will then keep you in shape. Make sure that the food that you eat. The other thing that you might find interesting, my wife is vegan. I'm 80-20 likely, and I do all the shopping, even for her. And if I go into a grocery store, I always stay on the outside. I don't want any of the stuff that is in the center aisles. I go to the vegetables, all the green stuff, and all of the healthy stuff. So the purpose of the book is to explore things that we can do, become more knowledgeable about our bodies, and be more proactive and being fit and healthy mentally, physically, and basically what I'm trying to do, Annie, is I want to live till I'm 120.
Well, if you have a plan, you can do it. You actually remind me of this guy that I read about. His name is Peter Daniels. He's a self-made billionaire, and he was dyslexic, so he never graduated high school. And
I
like
love it.
you, he thought, there's something wrong with me. Why am I not able to read, right? And at 26 years old, he was a bricklayer, and he had like some aha moment. He converted to Christianity because he had realized, wait, I if I am a child of God and we are all children of God, then we're all equal under the eyes of God. And I am just as worthy as anyone else to have money and to have opportunity and to pursue the things that I want, right? He had realized that. And then at 27, he decided, you know what, I'm going to learn how to read. Can you believe it? He didn't know how to read, and he learned at 27 how to read. And at first, he was carrying around a dictionary with him, and he had to ask people, how do you pronounce this word? And he thought, like, because people were probably um, trying to mock him for being so uneducated, that maybe they made up the pronunciation. Like, let's say if the word was, I don't know, pasta, maybe they would have said it's pronounced as pasta, for all you
Yeah.
know. So
Yeah.
he would have to like ask a second person to verify, how do you pronounce this word, just to learn how to speak English. And then he would practice public speaking alone in his bedroom every night.
Sure.
Yeah. And then I don't know, he started like 3 businesses. All of them failed. Finally, he ended up in real estate, and he became a self-made billionaire. He bought properties with loans at first, but then he lost everything. He went bankrupt, and then he realized, wait, this isn't the way to build wealth. If I really want to build wealth, I have to actually have assets. So he bought gold and silver and like actual property with cash, not with debt. And I don't know what he did, but he managed to turn it into $1 billion. He's 92 years old today. He wrote in his biography, he said, I I want to live until I'm 100 something, right? He said, if I don't have a plan to live this long, I think I will die well before then. So I
Exactly.
have to create a plan to live this long so that I have something to work toward. Otherwise, I will die younger than that. So he's still alive and kicking today, surprisingly.
Amazing, eh? Amazing.
Yeah.
So the other part that I like about him is that I felt I had been a failure for a long, long time, and then and part of it, I wanted to prove to me that I could do it as well as my friends around me that had been so successful and going to college and university. And then, but in order for me to do that, I had to go away from where I was and start new. And that was going to Canada. And then I had been trained in the lumber side and then build my own lumber mill. But even when I started that, and I came here in July 1965, it was not until 1990 that I still was struggling with interacting with other people because I was self-confident of myself, that I had still kind of the mentality I had failed. And a lot of people said to me already by then, I had a lumber mill and I had all kinds of other things, and oh my God, you're so successful. And I didn't feel that. And so then by pure, and then I couldn't interact well with people, and it was about 3 or 4 from my area, from my operations, I was okay, but anything more than that was a problem. And then my ex-sister-in-law said to me, I want to take you with me to Toastmasters. And I said,
You also
Toastmasters?
did Toastmasters. That's why you speak so well.
And so I said
We
to
both did.
her,
I did Toastmasters too.
I said to her, I said to her, what are they doing there? She said, you can just sit there and you look, you know. And I said, nobody's going to ask me anything, are they? They said, no, no, no. I said, so halfway through the meeting, I'm sitting there and taking it all in. Somebody said, hey, John, tell us a little bit about you. I said, oh my God, I'll never go back here. And so, but I did go back, and I stayed there for 10 years. And I became, and you can relate to that, the highest level in Toastmasters is being a DTM, a Distinguished Toastmaster. And so,
Yeah.
and I did competitive speaking and became better and better and better. And then I really felt strong about helping others that went through it. And the time that I've been in Toastmasters, you know, I've seen hundreds of new people that had that anxiety. You know, for a lot of people, they fear public speaking more than death. And so I've seen the worst examples, but never have I seen one as bad as me in all that time. I was the absolute worst of all the worst that I've seen. I was ready to crawl out of there on hands and knees just to get out of there. So, but I stayed and I became a distinguished Toastmaster, and probably of the millions of people from around the world that have been in Toastmasters, less than 1% go as far as becoming a DTM, because if you have the commitment, you want to go further. Doesn't mean that the others did not benefit from it, but depending on how much you want to get out of it, it's so important to me that it changed my life. There is no question about that.
Yeah, it really helps to build your confidence. That's what helped build my confidence as well. I know what it's like, though I didn't get the DTM.
No, but still, you're a very, very good and effective communicator. So what then happened is that happened then. And, so then I became a DTM, and, but the other part about Toastmasters is that I believe, and I talk to a lot of people about it, they say, oh, that means that you become a good speaker. I said, no, that's not what it is. It is part of it. The most important part of Toastmasters is becoming a good listener. And being able to, where I had a tendency, ADHD, of rambling, and all these things are running through my mind, and so it helps you to sit back and articulate the points that you want to make as part of being a Toastmaster, and that's all part of the process.
Well, that's from the table topics. I feel like the table topics were more suitable for
Absolutely.
listening than the actual speaking. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and just for our guests that are watching, that with Toastmaster, the table topics are topics that are put in front of you to speak on a topic for a minute or 2 minutes, I forget now what it was, and then they will do a critique you on it, and that means they will make comments on it. First positives one and areas for improvement, and then gets you to the point where impromptu, if you have to give a presentation, you become very good at that. And it served me immensely well. The other thing that I found, Annie, is that understanding business meetings and doing Robert's rules, I found in all the time that I've been in associations and been in all kinds of settings where there are business meetings, very few people are very good at business meetings. They are not. And it makes life altogether much easier to conduct meetings and to allow everybody to be heard, and at the same time structurally make it happen. But only for those that have been involved in it fully appreciate it.
Oh, yeah. Because so many people, they don't start meetings on time and they don't end meetings on time. I did Toastmasters much younger than you. I did it when I was 20 years old to 22. So I hadn't even gotten into the professional world yet. So it was a real shocker for me entering into the professional world that people don't know how to do this.
Yeah. But it really, really, served me well, and it served you very well, right? So without that, I could not have done what I did. There is no question about that. And it gave me confidence. And now a lot of times when I do presentations, and it happens frequently that I'm a speaker, keynote speaker somewhere, or impromptu get in a situation. Today, I just before this podcast, I had meetings where, there were probably 100 people in that meeting, and very impromptu, somebody said, well, maybe John can comment on that as well. Now, that would have been impossible if it were not for the fact that I'm a Toastmaster. And, so that has served me well. And then I really loved the books, but I'm a very late starter. It was not, you see, even when I found a book, Against All Odds. Sorry, Driven to Distraction is the book, written by Dr. Hollowell. I bought it January 1997. So that is
So you actually didn't discover it until you're nearing 60s.
correct. Yeah. That's
Wow, that's a
and
long
then
time.
even then I did not fully understand it until I Googled it and got to know more. And it took me 5 years before I went to my doc, our family doctor, that delivered our two daughters, who was a friend as well. And I go to his office and he said, John, why are you here? And I said, I think I got ADHD. And so we went through that together and he said, yeah, for sure you do. And so by then I was 62. And then, so that looking back, the war years were tough, difficult. In 1940, my dad was drafted into the Dutch army. My mom had already two kids, a sister 1 year older than me, brother 2 years older, and they went through the war years. And my dad, the last time they saw him, he was seen in Rotterdam before it was bombed, and they didn't know if he was dead or alive for about 5 years. But it was a tough go, and I still remember, that even as little kids, the winter 1944, 1945 were the hunger winter, and it was extremely cold. And the three of us would every morning go out with gunny sacks into the railroad yards, pick up anything edible and burnable. And then, so I can still feel the feeling of hunger even now. And then it was extremely cold, and we had this little stove in a little room that we heated, and it was very hot or very cold, and I can still feel that. And then the other part was anxiety, of fear of losing my mom, because she was the protector as a little kid. And and that was, I was counseled when I was over 50 for the inner child. So PTSD and inner child was still part of my life as well.
I mean, it's not a nice experience, but I feel like it's a good experience to have because you're grateful for everything that you have today. You
No
know,
question about that.
I feel like the people around me who work in the office that I work in, they're born here in America. They're white. It's not about race, right? But
No,
their family has been here for
but
a long
still,
time. They
yeah.
were born middle class. They had a really good childhood compared to me, but I felt like they they don't appreciate the freedoms that we have here. You know,
I,
just the mere fact that the water comes out of the faucet. I am grateful that I wake up in the morning, I turn on the faucet to wash my face, and water just comes out. Like I am so grateful for that. You
yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah. And I feel the same as you do. And we have a place in Victoria. That's about 500 miles south of us. It's on Vancouver Island, where we have horses. Both my wife and myself, we ride English dressage, and so she stays there, and then I leave Friday afternoon. She come back on Monday into Prince George. So and a lot of times, when we sit and then we look at Vancouver Island, and then we look at the world around us, look at the Central Europe, the Ukraine, and then the Middle East, and some of the other places, and saying how fortunate we are. This is the best it can be, and how lucky we are, really. And just like you said, a lot of people don't appreciate that. They bitch and complain about this, that, and the other thing, and saying, we're so lucky,
We are.
so in
The
North
mere fact,
America.
I mean, can you imagine like just a couple hundred years back, people had to take showers, baths in a public bathing house.
Yeah.
They couldn't shower every day. They stink really badly.
Yeah.
Today, we can shower twice a day if we want.
Yeah.
There's an abundance of water in our home. People don't die young from illnesses that are preventable anymore. We
No.
have cars that can drive us places. It's simply amazing. We have robot vacuums that can literally vacuum our home. We
And,
don't even need to sweep anymore.
and it makes you wonder where it all goes. I remember, Annie, like with my dad's parents in particular. I was quite young then when they passed away, but this was in the early 50s. And they were farm laborers. And they had a little house in northern Holland, and they didn't have running water. You had a bucket, you had to pull it out of the ground, something they dug out. The bathroom was a hole down in the very far corner of the place, and the only time they went to the store is to have salt and sugar and some of those things, but otherwise they didn't go. They grew it all themselves, but they were farm laborers. That's what they did, and that's how they grew up. And I sometimes look back because the First World War was in that area from 1914 to 1918. Then you had the 30s, which were the Depression, and then the next thing, 1940 to 45, the Second World War. And then, but a lot of people forget a lot of times. I usually, because I was born then, I still remember things about it. I make it a habit, and I've done that for the last 12 years, where I talk to at least 2 schools on the week of Remembrance Day, November the 11th, and talk about why the 2 minutes of silence, and what we take for granted now, and how we should be appreciating it, because how quickly things can change. And so even this year again, I did 2 schools here actually, and the year before I did 2 schools here, and then 2 in Vancouver and region. And I feel I have an obligation to do that because I still remember about it, and I still appreciate the people that liberated us, and I fully appreciated how quickly things can change. But the other part that I remember about it is that in 1945, when the war was over, it was not over that my dad came back, hadn't been together with the family for 5 years, had been underground, had a helmet with him, a bullet had gone right through it that barely missed his head, and the family was never the same again. He became alcoholic, or not on the street and all of that, but started relying on alcohol and dealing with PTSD, and had difficulty expressing what had happened. But the other part was to rebuild the family. That could take a whole generation before there was some kind of normality, if you wish, if that ever happened. And those were difficult times.
Well, it's a good thing that I feel like you have a certain life force. It's your own spirituality. It's your spirit, your soul. You have a strong spirit. You didn't pass it on to your kids,
Right.
that kind of trauma. Because
Right.
you can always cop out and make the excuse, well, I didn't have good childhood. My dad was an alcoholic. He had PTSD. Therefore, I, as an adult, am the way I am today, and I treat my kids just as terribly because of the way I grew up. There are
Yeah.
a lot of
And
people who make that kind of
I
excuse.
agree with that. So,
Yeah.
and that no, I don't do that. Yeah. That I feel I'm blessed every day of being where we are, and for our health, and enjoying what we do, and wherever that opportunity presents itself. I like to be a speaker and entrepreneurial individual, but also in terms of telling young people in particular. I gave a presentation, I think it was about a week, 2 weeks ago, at a school, and talking about so often for young people, they don't feel they look right, this is not right, and the other things. We are all very, very special. And that's how everyone should think about themselves. They are unique, they are special, and enjoy life and enjoy the things around them. And then I gave them all a book. Actually, I think I read about 60 of them. Gave them all a copy of this book and signed every one of them. And I like to do that, you know.
I have an additional question, even though it's a change of topic. So, the the people who kind of like looked down on you because they ended up going to college, but you were just a laborer. Did you ever see them again after you became very, very successful in business and had their attitude change towards you, or did they just ignore you and pretend like you didn't exist? Like, what happened?
I know they see. For me, the perfect thing about it was that I didn't have to prove to anyone. The one that I had to prove it to is me. And I did that, right? So it took me a long time. It took me until I was in my 60s, and I knew ADHD, and I started to. So I was and then the same as going to the gym and becoming a bodybuilder and competing regionally and then provincially, qualifying nationally, and then for the Arnolds. And I felt good about that. Not so much, but that I can do it and that everybody, but feeling good about it. So now I know a lot of people probably know me, but I'm very, very active on Facebook and the other places, and my books are all over the place. And then I'm frequently even in Holland still being interviewed by some of the radio stations in the region. And every so often I get an email and say, I couldn't believe it was you, and you were speaking English, and then all of a sudden you switched to dialect. I love dialects, So and so to me is that I know I can prove the point that and I can make it as being qualified to make it, is saying you can do anything. Believe in you, be at peace with who you are and be satisfied that you can do anything you want to do. And then the other part is that attitude, passion, work ethic, and then then things will happen and you will become successful. And whatever that may mean, everybody doesn't have to be an entrepreneur, businessman or anything like that. But whatever they want to pursue, do it well and be contented and take care of you and yourself, your body, and get some exercise, watch out for your diet, and all those obvious things. And then if I can write my books and they are of a benefit to anybody, I think that's, for me, very, very important.
But what if I do believe in myself? But the thing is, I keep replaying in my head something my guidance counselor told me when I was in high school, and she always told me that I would be a failure for the rest of my life, and that was my destiny. She said, "That is your destiny, your fate. That is, I know how your life is going to turn out." And I always, still to this day, I will replay what she said over and over again, and I will say, "I will prove you wrong." I honestly, I feel like I haven't moved past it. I'm successful as I am today, but I still feel like I replay it and I use that to fuel my fire still at this point.
Yeah, that's good then, for that purpose only, Annie, but not for any other, because you have proven her wrong a long time ago. But then, on the other hand, I wonder what made her so frustrated that it could well be jealousy of, that you have all those qualities that she doesn't have, maybe, or something like that. Because under normal circumstances, no one would say that, because obviously you already then were very bright, very smart, and very attractive already, and so you were going to be successful. And maybe she had other things that I find a lot of times. What I always say, credibility is indefensible because your friends believe you, and your enemies you can never convince. So
Wait, repeat that. Credibility,
I
what?
is indefensible because your friends know, and your enemies you cannot convince about credibility or the way to succeed. That in her mind, no matter what you do, you will never be successful. But it's not for her, for you to convince her of that. It's her own frustration. I would say I'm not going to waste a lot of my time on her unless I use it for the purposes of kind of firing myself up. And when I say, okay, that's, again, I will prove her wrong, even if she's no longer there or you don't even know where she is. But at least in your mind, you already are, and I know that just by the little that I know about you, that you already have proven yourself to be very, very successful.
I think that's a more powerful way of viewing it. Yeah.
So,
She,
so
she, I don't think it was, what was the issue was I didn't want to go straight to college. I said I
right,
couldn't afford it. I come from a poor family. I didn't want to take
right,
on any student loan debt because a lot of people, this is what you do. You want people to follow their passion and live their dream. It's literally the title of your book.
right.
And when I was 16 to 18 years old, I was like, it doesn't make sense. I read on the news that people go to college undeclared, not knowing what they want. Then they switch majors 3 times and they
Yeah,
come out with all the student loan debt and
I
they're working
know.
a job that doesn't need the degree.
Yeah,
They make the
that's
same
right.
as a high school graduate. So I
Yeah,
was like, why go through 4 years of that trouble and still come out not knowing what you want to do? I said to this woman, the guidance counselor, I was like, wouldn't it be more smarter and wiser to first figure out what you want to do and then make a plan to go after it? If it doesn't involve college, like let's say I wanted to be a hairstylist, then I don't need to go to college for that. I go to beauty school, right? And
exactly.
you don't stay poor being a hairstylist. If you own the hair salon and you manage all these different stylists, you can make a lot of money. Maybe as a hairstylist, no, but the business owner of any business in any industry is rich if they make it, right?
So,
It's a different
so,
story if you're the employee.
so
But
what I
yeah,
see with you, Annie,
yeah.
is that when I came in July of 1965, I had 3 books in
Hmm.
my case. And I'm not a big reader because that's not part of ADHD, but these books I read very, very closely, page by page. I'm not a fast reader either. So if you would say, what were the titles, John, of the books that you took with you? In Dutch, they were Dutch books, and you will say, oh, why would you be interested in that? Somebody is grade 7, 3 times, mind you. But Management by Drucker, I just loved the book. I read it probably 4 or 5 times. I still have it. The other one was Logical Thinking. That's what I think about when I hear you, is because you think logically and
Hmm.
strategic.
Yeah.
That's a gift. Not everybody has that. And then the other one was about Canada that I had. But in particular, thinking about logic is the advantage that I believe I have over other people is that I have my own MBA. I had to create my own in my own mind. It's grade 7. I'm very good financially. I, obviously a good writer, and I'm a good speaker, and I have an amazing memory, and these are all qualities that should have got me past grade 3 and grade 7. But so, and then the other one that I have is that, and I trained myself to do that because I had to. I have to be successful. That means I have to start thinking strategically. Where other people are thinking about today or tomorrow or next year, I want to think in my
You're
business the
thinking
next
about living
5
to
years, 10 years,
120.
15, 20 years. That's where I'm going.
You're literally thinking about living another 40 years.
Exactly, yeah. But also to have that ability. A lot of people in business don't have that. They fail thinking logical, and they are not very good strategically. And
I didn't think about that. I guess even when I was still in high school, I'm thinking, wouldn't it make more sense, like if I thought beyond what happened 4 years, right? Wouldn't it make more sense if I figure out what I want to do now and then go after what I want?
yeah,
I think maybe other people my age were only thinking the next 4 years of their life.
yeah,
Which school will they go to? But they weren't thinking beyond that.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So the other question is, so what brought you into writing?
Oh, wow. This is actually my second book. The 5-Day Job Search is my second book. The first one was 1001 Ways to Save Money. And it's also that same guidance counselor because she told me I would be a failure for the rest of my life. And then I was like always searching. I was like, well, is there a solution for me to become successful if I will always be a failure? Like, what if I search for the solution? And I knew for a fact I wanted to help people with their finances, just like Dave Ramsey. But there's no college degree for that. There's no such thing as a college degree in personal finance and helping people learn how to budget their
No.
money.
Yeah.
There's no such thing. So
No.
I was like, if this doesn't exist as a degree, and it also isn't a job, you cannot get a W-2 job doing this. It doesn't exist. How can I do this and still financially sustain myself? I knew for a fact everyone was always like, you have to network. I was like, okay. So any events that I could find, I went. And I found this event. It was called the Small Business Expo, being held somewhere in Manhattan, New York. I went there and they were giving some sort of high pressure sales pitch to take this publishing a book workshop. It's called like Publish a Book and Grow Rich. If you buy now, today, on the spot, it'll be only $97 and you can bring a friend. So
You
I
bought
turned
it.
to the stranger. I bought it, but I also turned to the stranger next to me. And then I was like, 97 is a little expensive. Are you interested? And then she's like, yeah, I'm interested. I was like, why don't we split this in half and I'll call you my friend? So I got it for half that price as well.
I love it.
Then I took the workshop. It was a 3-day workshop, and they showed you how to write a book in only 40 hours. There was this whole system that they created, and I just followed the system. I wrote my books.
Was that before IA?
Yeah,
Oh,
the
sorry,
first
AI.
one, AI, yeah. The first one was written in 2017, so definitely
Yeah,
before AI.
Yeah, I'm
And the
just
second
joking.
one, I finished in January, right before ChatGPT came out. So I had already
Yeah.
finished it. And I already
Yeah.
paid an editor to help me edit it. It wasn't until like after AI came out, I realized you can now use AI to help you edit books,
Yeah.
So instead
Yeah.
of paying $2,000 for an editor, you can just use AI to help you edit the book.
Yeah, and then mine were before that too, and so writing books is not easy, and especially not you have to figure out what font you're going to use, what structure of the book is going to be, and should there be pictures in it, should there not be pictures in it, how should the title be, and how do you draw attention to it, but once you do one, and you kind of like in our case, I'm my own publisher now, and and I like it. And then to write one, and the ones that the next one's coming out is next July, and we're getting close to the point now that we have the framework for it, and to make it interesting, it's quite an experience.
It is. And I love how you're giving back. Like you're someone who has so much wisdom and experience to share. Like you share your problems, the struggles, and then the life lessons you learned on how to overcome them as well. And you share it openly, not just
Yeah.
with me right now, but you're sharing
No,
it in the book. And
I do.
and I think that is a gift.
Yeah. For me, it's important to do that, so because too easily, people say, without, if you're successful in business or appear to be successful in business, and then a lot of people, they are kind of down on themselves, and they say, well, I can never do that because you were lucky, so I cannot do that. And I said, no, you know, the harder you work, the luckier you get, right? So that's how it works, So it always takes hard work, commitment, and then maybe if you work hard enough, then if the objective is to, whatever the goal is, to write books or to start a business, then you will become successful, but you will fall down along the way, and that people are just not automatically successful. Or think that if you think that all this is just for making money, that's not the right objective either. So, but what you want to do is you want to be consistent. You want to think about it, and every so often you have to wake up in the middle of the night and wonder what you're going to do the next morning. And then especially dealing with bankers a lot of times is you have to develop a good understanding of how business works and financing works, and all of that is very, very important.
Yeah. I think I have a last question for you.
Okay.
So, despite your kind of story, how you came from nothing, you came to Canada with 24 for $25 in your pocket, and the things that you've created out of your life, people still, after all that, say that you're lucky. They can
Yeah,
still
some
say
people,
that John
yeah.
Brink was simply lucky.
Yeah, for some people, they want to find an excuse as to why they are not successful. And then if you are, and maybe that develops with your coach that said you will not succeed, is because they were not happy with what they were doing. And it already was obvious that you had all the elements that would make you successful. Because from me, it is obvious that you will be very successful, the way you approach life and all the interaction that we had and the things that you want about in terms of the writing of your books, and then the history in terms of your parents and how they grew up, and and how difficult it was and how you appreciate it. You will be very successful too, but at the same time, that does not necessarily mean that everybody be very, very happy that you're very successful, especially the ones that are not working as hard as you are. Then they say, well, there must be, maybe I can knock it down a few pages or whatever, right? So I don't pay any attention to them. Is saying, well, I don't have time for that. If I
So,
meet negative, then I say, don't waste my time because I don't want to be part of that.
right. So we've only been talking for an hour, but you're
I
already
know.
saying you already know for a fact that I'll be really successful.
Yeah.
So my question to you is like, if see, the thing is, I see clearly in my head that I'm gonna sell millions of copies of my new book. I can see so clearly that I will eventually be a household name like Oprah Winfrey or Donald Trump because I'm going to go after everything I want. But other people don't see it yet. And I just, it's almost like this cognitive dissonance where I literally live in the fantasy of my head. Do you know what I
Exactly.
mean?
Yeah,
But
I know
it hasn't
exactly what
come
you mean.
true into this tangible reality yet. And I feel like sometimes I'm impatient. I'm like, why hasn't it happened
No,
yet?
no, you're not impatient. Yeah, I feel exactly the same as you do. I have 3 books, and I will have 4. And I say to them, and even Andrew and Scott around me here say, there's no question in my mind that I will sell millions of copies of these books. There's no question about that. It's just a question of time, including the other one that I'm doing. And then in terms of the podcast thing, I give it all that I got. That's what I do. And, that I will be successful. I'm thinking about setting up a platform, and I want to start it in 24. I know I'm going to do that. And now what I'm doing is, you can relate to this. If you look at this book, and on top it says John Brink, so I said the next book that I wrote then was ADHD. I said, no, this name, I want to raise it higher. I want people to recognize my name, so because that will become my platform. And the same I do in podcasting. I'm podcasting around the world. I think, with all due respect, what is Annie? Is 185, guys? 185.
Yeah,
I,
I
yeah,
saw.
and so I do about between 13 and 15 podcasts a month, and then probably half a dozen where I'm the guest, and I love it. I just love it, and and then in the meantime I do speaking, and then I run back to my operation and manage my companies, and whatever I do, I give it 125%.
So while you see these visions in your head and grappling with the difference between what you see in your head and the reality that is the physical, you simply tell yourself, I will let time do its thing because I'm taking the action. The result's not there yet, but the seed is planted and it will just
Precisely
water.
that.
Okay.
And then I continue to do the right thing over and over and over and over again. And whatever I do it well. Like I was nearly a minute late. That bothers me with your program.
I saw.
It does. I
I
said
saw
to
at
Scott,
8:01. I
or
was
the
like,
guys here, because I was coming out of meetings that went longer, and then I had to rush, and then and I want to be prepared, so and I don't want to allow you to wait because I want to be on time. That to me is always very, very important. And then in believing that this will happen, there is no question in my mind, same here, that will happen. There's no, but as long as you keep doing the right thing over and over and over again. But at the same time, like you, I have to be a good communicator, and I have to feel that I have the confidence, and I got that from Toastmasters, is that if I'm in a setting that is spontaneous, that's the same as what we're doing now, that I will find the answers. I do. I will find it in my mind, and I will not all of a sudden lose track, or I have the confidence that I can do that. And so that gives me confidence, but it came late in my life after I was 60. Up to that point, I was successful. Everybody said I built companies and all the other things. I felt I had failed. I'm past that now, obviously. And so now I'm going to have to live at least till I'm 120.
I love it. You're just like Peter Daniels, that guy I was talking about. Totally.
I love it, Annie. Anything else that comes to mind then before we go?
No, I feel like I've walked away with more confidence in my plan.
Annie, it is my privilege and a pleasure to have a podcast with you. Let's stay in touch. I'm going to say, make sure we sign the books. They'll go out likely tomorrow or on Monday, and I'll sign all of them.
That one where you said multiple ups and downs in your life.
Correct.
Can I get 2 signed copies of that one? Because I
Two?
want to give one
Yeah.
to my boss. He's going to
Yeah.
go bankrupt.
Okay.
And I want him to know, even if he goes bankrupt,
What is
everything
his
will be
name?
fine.
What
His
is
name is
first name?
Adam.
Adam?
Adam.
Okay. I will get sign that for him as well. And so you get 2 of those and one of the other ones.
Okay. Thank
Annie,
you so much.
It was a pleasure and a privilege. And let's make sure we stay in touch.
John, absolutely. Thank you.
Take care.
Have a good night.
You too. Bye-bye.